So all of this came about. Oh, and I'm a speech and language pathologist and an early childhood administrator specialist by training. So all of this came about as we kept working and talking about third grade reading. So, and we can't expect a third grade teacher, a second grade teacher, a first grade teacher, a kindergarten teacher, a preschool teacher to build the basics. That's by parents. And so that's why this work is so important. This work is for children age 0 to 3 by design, but when you hear it, you're going to understand that this work is for people age 0 to 99 for design. It's about relationships and important communications. So let's talk about that brand new baby. When our babies arrive to us, they have perfectly formed little fingers, perfectly formed little noses and toes, and they come to us with a brain that's ready to be built. The brain is unfinished when they're born. They have 4 billion neurons in their brain, which are basically not connected. How are they connected? Through loving conversations and loving relationships. The first connection a baby has, because that baby's lived here for 9 months, is to mom. And the neural connections to mom aren't just me and mom. They're how my mom sounds, how my mom feels, how my mom looks, how my mom smells, how I feel around my mom. So everyone else in that baby's world for the first minutes, seconds, hours, days is defined to the baby's brain as not mom, right? Because the baby's wired for mom. So the baby meets dad and the baby's like, not mom. And I build new connections, dad. I build new connections, grandma. I build new connections, our house, our dogs, my brothers and sisters. But every new connection is built on an existing connection. So that's why babies need words in their brain. Mm-hmm. The more words they have in their brain, the more connections they have to learn to build. So for example, when a 2-year-old sees a goat and says, "Goggy," that's what's in their brain, right? That 4-legged furry thing to them is a goggy. And we help them build new connections. You're right. That looks like a doggy, but it's a goat. And we could talk more about that. But that's how brains build. My brain builds that way. Your brain builds that way. A couple years ago, I said to some younger people I work with, "What is a podcast?" And they said, "It's like a radio show. Okay, now I'm hooking it to what I already know. That's how we learn. If I say to you, "I bought a ukulele," and you don't know what that is, I say it's like a guitar. So you're going to notice this. As you go through life, the way you learn new things is to compare it to old things. And I'm going to talk to you about a thing called a word gap in a minute. But the more things in your brain, the more you can learn. The less things in your brain, if I read a word that I don't understand and don't know, and don't even know how to get to know it, I'm going to pass it by. Okay? If we have kids in a group in school and everyone else is, yeah, and I don't understand, it's always better. That's some behavior problems come up there because anyone as a human being would rather look in charge and maybe behave badly than look like they don't know. So we want our babies to have words in their brains. The most important people to get words in their brains are their family, their parents. So we say to parents, you are your child's first and most important teacher, which is true, but that scares parents. I'm not a teacher. I'm not trained to be a teacher. All we need to say is you are your baby's first and most important teacher because it's your face, your voice, your loving touch they crave to learn and to build trust in their life. So, brains are built. Brains are built through loving conversations and experiences. What I'm trying to teach you today is for you, inside of you, to have some knowledge so you can carry this on in a way that makes sense to you and your work. I'm going to show you a quick 2-minute video that shows you this explosive connections of neurons. It's explosive. And this is just for you. You may or may not want to show it to parents, but I think it just helps explain what I just said.
A child's experiences during the earliest years of life have a lasting impact on the architecture of the developing brain. Genes provide the basic blueprint, but experiences shape the process that determines whether a child's brain will provide a strong or weak foundation for all future learning, behavior, and health. During this important period of brain development, billions of brain cells called neurons send electrical signals to communicate with each other. These connections form circuits that become the basic foundation of brain architecture. Circuits and connections proliferate at a rapid pace and are reinforced through repeated use. Our experiences and environment dictate which circuits and connections get more use. Connections that are used more grow stronger and more permanent. Meanwhile, connections that are used less fade away through a normal process called pruning. Well-used circuits create lightning-fast pathways for neural signals to travel across regions of the brain. Simple circuits form first, providing a foundation for more complex circuits to build on later. Through this process, neurons form strong circuits and connections for emotions, motor skills, behavioral control, logic, language, and memory during the early critical period of development. With repeated use, these circuits become more efficient and connect to other areas of the brain more rapidly. While they originate in specific areas of the brain, the circuits are interconnected. You can't have one type of skill without the others to support it. Like building a house, everything is connected, and what comes first forms a foundation for all that comes later.
So, and the other thing about not having enough words in your head, there's all kinds of research, is your processing speed is slower. So if I say to a group of children, marshes, bogs, rivers, lakes, and oceans are all bodies of water, and if you don't know the word marshes, you're stuck. You lose the rest, right? It's as if you set me down in a foreign country and I can't even figure out where one word starts and one word ends. So that child's lost. It'd be as if you took 4 years of French in high school and then we took you to Paris. And you're like, you just feel like you can't catch up. And we have children who don't have enough words in their brain that feel like that at school sometimes. So babies need words. Talking is teaching, okay? Now, that video is something you may or may not want to show to parents. It's up to you. This video you're going to want to share. And I'm just going to tell you, don't worry about taking notes. Look at the right side of your packet. The last thing in it is a sheet that has heart, which is the name of this video, and a QR
on the right side behind all the sheets.
And a QR code so you can look at it on your phone, or anyone can look at it on your phone. All right, so you have this. This is about, well, let's just show it and then we'll all talk about it. Loving relationships.
Mom and Dad, I know I didn't come with an instruction manual, and sometimes you might wonder why. I mean, I definitely have more moving parts than my crib. But figuring me out isn't that complicated. You don't even need instructions because everything I need is pretty simple. And you already have it. To make sure I grow up smart, strong, and ready to be all I can be, all you need is HEART. H-E-A-R-T. Hug, engage, ask, read, and talk. See, I was pretty small when you first got me, but my brain was already going a million miles a minute, firing off 700 synapses every second. By the time I'm 3, 1 trillion connections will be formed. That's a lot of zeros. My brain will develop faster in my first 3 years than at any time in my life. So we gotta make the most of it right now. Because without positive interactions with you, those synapses can't fully bloom. You are the #1 factor in my brain development. And that's where the whole heart thing comes in. That's an acronym, a fancy word for shortcut. The H is for hug. It might seem silly, but my brain gets stronger every time you hug me. Really, a chemical is released that speeds up my brain development. Your hugs and kisses boost my confidence too. E is for engage. Don't just plop me in front of the TV. Play with me. Screen time can actually slow down my brain, and yours too. So let's go for walks, play at the park, build blocks, and just be silly. All that fun stuff helps me most. A is for ask. Ask me questions. Even if I can't talk yet, it gets my wheels turning. Lets me take an active role in my own learning and helps me figure out how things work. R is for read. Read to me every day. Even when I'm just a few months old, let me look at the pictures with you and learn that books are fun. It stimulates my imagination, helps me learn new words. and gets me ready to read when I get bigger. T is for talk. I won't be able to talk for a while, but the more you talk to me, the sooner I'll learn. Talk to me when you make dinner. Talk to me when you change my diaper. Talk to me when we're playing and driving in the car. The more words I hear by the time I'm 3, the better reader I'll be with higher grades and IQ. And kids who start out ahead, stay ahead. For life. So Mom and Dad, you don't need all those fancy gadgets. You have everything you need. And all I need is your heart. H-E-A-R-T.
When I use this, we can really do some conversation with the adults in the room. What did you like about it? What struck you? What are you doing that you saw? Which is always a really important thing to ask, because this is a very affirming approach. Parents, you're doing great. When we work together, we can give you more information so you can do even more. Very affirming. This is not you need to do this. This is you are great. Your kids need you. Here's more things you can do.
It's empowering to the parents from the very beginning. They don't
Yeah.
feel threatened or feel as if they've not done enough or they've done anything wrong. It just seemed to me to be very affirming
Yeah.
from the start.
And easy. And I like it that it's spoken from a child. So if you wanted to start your campaign by something like this might be a good kickoff. I'm just trying to throw out some ideas, and Eunice is going to come and work with you later. And I'm always available to come and co-present with you or introduce you and introduce a small segment, and you take over. We've done that at Liberty Baptist. So I can help you however you want. It's just, this is about relationships, and people in your church know you. Relationships.
Yep.
Here's how much it's about relationships. This is how we all learn best. So if I read a review of a movie and it says it's good, I might go see it. If someone I know says, you got to see this movie, is great, I'm going.
Right.
Same with a restaurant, same with a book. We rely on relationships.
Same with your favorite teacher.
Same with my favorite teacher, yeah. If you think of a favorite teacher, I don't think it's probably because they knew math facts best. If you think of a favorite teacher you had, you connected. They cared about you. They cared about you and their learning. And if you had a worse teacher, it was probably because they didn't connect with you. All learning occurs best through relationships. Okay. The next thing I want to talk to you about is this thing called the 30 million word gap, which is the basis of research for all of this language learning word vocabulary stuff. I want to tell it to you as a story. I want us to just look at each other. But you do have, I wrote an article on it, and it's going to be on pages 24 and so of your packet. But I want to have a relationship with you about this information because it's important. So this work began in 1965 when President Lyndon Johnson announced the War on Poverty. And the War on Poverty had two main prongs. One was workforce development, and one was a 4.5 day a week free preschool for low-income 4-year-olds called Head Start. That was the beginning of Head Start, okay? Yeah. And now it's full day and it's a little different, but that's when Head Start started because there were two main factions of thought. One was, if you're born smart, you're going to be smart. If you weren't born smart, that's who you are. The other was, wait a minute. There is not a difference in children's ability to learn or desire to learn. There is a difference in the opportunities they have, which is, thank goodness, the school of thought that makes the most sense, that research bears out that the War on Poverty was built in. There's not a difference in a child's ability or desire. There's a difference in opportunity. Head Start. Let's give them more opportunity. So in Kansas, there was a Head Start, and the University of Kansas wanted to do some research about let's give kids more words. So they had their researchers go to the Head Start classes every day, sit with the kids, do everything we know is good education. A child says block, and the person would say, yes, you're right, it's a square red block. Build on what they say. A child says potty, and you say, yep, you need to go to the bathroom, I'll help you. Build, build, build. They even did field trips, and so before the field trips, they would, talk about the zebras and the elephants and the this, go to the zoo, and then come back and talk more. So these children's vocabularies were huge. compared to other children who didn't have this. However, when they went to kindergarten, they had these words, but their trajectory of learning more and new words didn't change much from the children who didn't have this input. So, Betty Hart and Todd Risley went back to the drawing board and took 20 years almost to develop their new study in mid-80s and said, we can't make a difference with children and their teachers in preschool. Where could we maybe make a difference? You should know this from what I've already told you today. Where can they make a difference? Not in school, at home. So, in 1985, they started their new study. And the study involves socioeconomic strata, and that's the study, and I'm going to talk to you about that, but then we're going to put that aside. We're not going to talk about that anymore. So what they did is they engaged 50 families who promised they could stay in the study from the time their children were babies till they were 3 years old. They divided them into, I'm just going to say, high income, middle income, low income. The families had to promise that they would stay in the same home for 3 years, and they had a phone. No cell phones in 85 unless you were a doctor, right? So I'm going to tell you right now, we missed the lowest of the low. There's a lot of families that couldn't have promised that. However, 42 of the 50 families stayed in the study the whole time. And these researchers went to their house for 1 hour a month and recorded everything said to, by, and around these little ones. The data was cut and sliced and looked at in so many different directions, it took almost another 6 years for a report to come out. And the report was called The Early Catastrophe. I'm going to tell you why. Okay. So the researchers' surprise was how naturally skilled every single parent was at engaging with their child. How good they were. All the children learned to talk, walk, eat by themselves, potty train. Every child. That was the good thing. The bad thing was, I'm just going to go from high to low, not middle. In the highest socioeconomic homes, a child heard 2,000 words an hour. In the lowest, 600 words an hour. In the highest socioeconomic home, turns were taken, and this is really important part. Remember, it's conversation. It's not talking at, it's talking with. Turns were taken during an hour 250 times. Child talk, mom talk. Child talk, dad talk. Child talk, child talk. Turns 250 times an hour. In the lowest, 50 times an hour. And the most heartbreaking research finding was, in the highest socioeconomic homes, children heard something affirming or good or positive 40 times an hour. In the lowest, 4. So multiply that hour by a day, by a week, by a month, by a year. By the time the children, it was projected that by the time these children were 4 years old, they heard 30 million less words, the lowest socioeconomic.
So the 4 affirming words at
the 40 and the 4?
Yes. An example of what
An example would be,
for the 4.
Well, I don't know what the 4 were, but here's what affirmation would be. You look cute, I like you, cute belly button, you did it. Anything positive. So the highest socioeconomic heard 40 positive things about themselves an hour. The lowest, 4.
So, and then with the initial 50, you said 42 lasted the entire time. So the remaining 8, were they all in the lowest income bracket?
Nope. They were all spread out through. Yeah. Good question, though. So socioeconomic, that's the study. So many of the studies are. This study has been challenged about the small size of the 42 families, about the methodology. But I've read all the research I can find on it. Any challenge ends with this. Nevertheless, there is a word gap, and the word gap becomes the achievement gap. The challenge isn't about it's a bad study. The challenge is about some nuances in the study, and the challenge is about making sure we don't focus on the socioeconomic. And here's how we're not going to focus on the socioeconomic. So an overarching umbrella of being in poverty is stress. You and I, we all have stress. We have small stresses, can't find my car keys. Large stresses, my dad died. Okay? Small, large. A family in poverty lives in stress pretty much 24/7. When we're in stress, all we have available to us is what we call the business talk of life. Get your shoes on, go to bed. We don't have a lot of the chit-chat talk available. Get your shoes on, wear your red shoes today. They'll look nice with your blue socks. When you're under stress, you don't have that. I'll tell you, if I'm trying to get to work and I've lost my car keys, pretend I'm a young man, and my children are around, I'm not going to say, oh, let's see if my car keys are under the blue couch or on the tall table. I'm going to say, where are my car keys? If we spill the milk, we're not going to say, oh, look at all the pretty shapes the milk is making, right? So when you're under stress, all you have available to you is what we call business. The richness of word learning is in chit-chat. Can you think of times in your life when you haven't been able to have the chit-chat? It's business. Business. Because you're under stress and you got to get something done. That's why families are happier during the summer. It's not go to bed, school, eat, pack lunch, do homework, all of that. So that's one reason. The other reason is distraction. And then this cuts across the board. And this is more 2000 and on phenomenon. But we are all pretty distracted by our screens. It's a social addiction, and we all have it. We live in the digital age. We got to figure out how to make it work. It's not going away. And it's as good as it is bad. But people always say to me, how much time should a 2-year-old spend on a screen? And there's all different answers of that, and it keeps changing. American Academy of Pediatrics used to say none, but now they know screens are relationship-based. You can talk to people on your screens. You can look at something together and talk about it while you're watching it. So those rules keep changing. But the question I don't get asked enough, and it's the real question, how much time should adults with young children spend on their screen? Watch when you're around at a restaurant, in a grocery store, or whatever, and you see a mom or dad like this, and the baby or the young one begging for attention. One of the research articles I read said children feel personally erased when the screen is more important than they are. So we got to ask both those questions. So that's distraction. So stressed and distracted, and not, the third thing is parents don't know how important their voice, their touch, their face is. And that small moments are big. You said that, Jonathan. Small moments are big. So I say, look out the window, I see a bluebird. That takes 2 seconds. And my child might only hear me, but they might say there's a brown bird. Or I hear the bird. Small moments are big, and we need to remind parents that you don't need to sit for 20 minutes and force a conversation. You can be driving in the car and say, look, the leaves used to be green, now they're yellow. And a child might say, are there any blue ones? No, that's silly. The conversation, small moments big. Is this making sense? 30 million word gap? So when these kids come to school with 30 million less words, they are going to they might look like behavior problems. Do you understand why?
Yes.
There's a group, they're lost, and it's easier to look bad than stupid. Right? And it's a misdiagnosis for most kids.
Right.
So we got to get words in their head. And it's not word of the day, and it's not a vocabulary list, it's conversation. And so let me tell you this. So I already told you that it's not word of the day and it's not vocabulary list. Hi, Eunice, come on in. And it's also, even though this campaign is for 0 to 3, this is a human need. This is a human need, conversation. And we all learn through relationships and conversation. So if you have families with children who are 5, 6, 7, 10, they might say to you, oh my gosh, I missed the 0 to 3. No, you haven't. This is important for our whole lives. Talking is important. The other thing, I'm gonna go shorter than usual on singing and reading, talk, read, sing, because I think this is a lot of information. I just want to help you know the read, sing part of it. Sing, okay? You can't be sad when you're singing. And if you are sad, you're not sad alone. Singing taps into our emotions like nothing else. What's that thing I gave you, Kathleen? Music makes sense when words don't.
When words fail.
When words fail.
Music speaks.
Music speaks. We all have little songs that we make up during the day. I sing, I have steps in my house. And so for me to get up those steps, I sing myself up those steps, right? And I sing songs to my grandson Henry that make no sense to anyone. I make them up. My dad used to sing to me when I was little, sing to all of us. I have 8 brothers and sisters. Maresy dotes and dozy dotes and the lambsy divey. And I just thought it was a bunch of nonsense. And when I was an adult, he said, you know what that means? I said, no, mares eat oats and does eat oats and little lambs eat ivy. But for us, a kid'll eat ivy too, wouldn't you? But for, it was a World War II song. But for us, it was Dad coming in the door, right? Mm-hmm. And I got to tell you, I just lost my dad, Alzheimer's. And when he went to the Alzheimer's memory care facility, we sang that song together. Mm-hmm. It was, singing gives you a connection like no other. Do you ever make up lullabies for the little ones? Make up songs about cleaning up or brushing your teeth or whatever, rhyming with their name. So singing, let's encourage families. We don't care what your voice sounds like. To your baby, it's the most beautiful sound in the world. And we can do more on that later, but that will be more of a conversation about at one of Eunice's meeting about how we all use singing. So let me quickly talk about reading and why it's so important. Part of it, we need to get words in babies' heads, little ones' heads, all of our heads. We take our children out of their own world when we read them a book. So there are words in books that we would not normally speak when we're changing diapers, cleaning the kitchen, walking in the neighborhood. Books are a mirror for children and all of us. They see themselves and say, oh, that's me, and a window for children and all of us. So I just brought a classic book to kind of illustrate some things, but let me tell you one other thing. Melody carries meaning, and when I talk to you, my melody is of speaking. When I read to you, my melody changes. The melody is different. And again, if we have children going to a group learning and a teacher reads a book and the melody is different, it takes the child a while to get into that. Our children need to know book sounds, that books have fronts and backs, that books have pictures and words, and when we read to them, that's what we do. I'm going to show you our baby bookmark in a minute, but I just want to give you an example of why reading is important. 5 little puppies dug a hole under the fence and went for a walk in the wide, wide world. Through the meadow they went, down the road, over the bridge, across the green grass, and up the hill, one right after another. I don't talk like that. You don't talk like that. I say the puppies got out, right? So books are very enriching for children.